Oh. All right, welcome and you're on deck. Brought to you by the Boson, the official school publication of University of Asia and the Pacific. My name is Joson. It's nice to have you guys here. So before anything else, I'd just like to recap. Previously, we already did an episode on harassment in which we tried to define what it is, and we also established different circumstances which fall under harassment. So one of which is domestic violence, elder or dependent adult abuse, workplace violence or harassment, sexual harassment, civil harassment, criminal, and cyberbullying or cyber stalking. We're looking forward to a really great discussion on anything that washes up on our deck. And joining us today is my beautiful co-hosts, who can introduce themselves, by the way.
Hi, my name's Javi, and joined with me today is IC, and today we'll be reading some of the feedback from the previous episode. And one of those feedbacks is that the hosts agreed and said harassment is a big umbrella term for many other things, yet they opted for a portion that directly kills the nuances that exist or could exist. And basically, why we wanted to discuss these comments is that this episode, we wanted to lay down what you can do more with harassment. We'll give a legit definite quote on what harassment is, like a Merriam-Webster quote. And
right, and
yeah.
Another comment that was given was the gravity of context, especially with something so sensitive as this, should answer more questions than it raises. So basically, it would have been better if the definition of harassment was clear and more beneficial if we actually also gave solutions to this.
All right, so I'd just like to thank you. Thank that viewer for your comments. We really appreciate it, and I hope that we're able to deliver more in this episode. All right, so like Javi said, we're going to give an actual definition from which we got. Harassment is defined as illegal behavior towards a person that causes mental or emotional suffering, which includes unwanted contacts without a reasonable purpose, insult, threats, touching, or offensive language. Simply put, it is behavior that is done to someone who did not consent to it. All right, so do we know what harassment is, guys? Do you have your own definitions? How do you understand harassment?
Okay, it was actually really great that the definition of harassment was given here, because to me, personally as a girl, harassment to me didn't really have a name. I just kind of grew up with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just kind of a part of my life, I would grow up and then I would walk around the streets, and then I was always told that as a young girl, oh, you should always protect yourself, make sure you're aware of your surroundings, especially be vigilant about the people around you. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is part of my routine to put keys in between my fingers or walk around and be very vigilant about everything around me. So to me, that's kind of my own definition of harassment. It's just a part of my daily life.
I'm so sorry to hear that. No, you know what? I'm sorry. Before you proceed, that I think it's so sad to hear that. I think I've actually thought about this before with my sister, and the way that you said, it's just something that you grew up with is really unfortunate. It just goes to show how present it is,
right,
and the world that we live in, and there's really no control for it. The fact that you had to adjust to it, the fact that a lot of people have to adjust to it, especially women, is just it's a sad thing.
Yeah. It's a hard truth for a lot of us.
Have you?
I don't really have my own definition, and I think I do somewhat subscribe to this dictionary definition that we've given, but I'm just a little bit confused with what defines as an illegal behavior, as we'll give more examples tackling is this really an illegal behavior, as we'll discuss in the group later on. So before we proceed, we'd like to give some tips on how we should react to harassment in general. And one of those tips is that if it does happen to you, you have the option to go somewhere safe, report to a company or a law enforcement, or even just your family and friends to help you through that process to do what is best for you. And if you think that is happening to someone, and you're not sure if it is happening to that person, then just simply talk to them. You shouldn't assume you should help them. Communicate to the harasser that they should stop and check in on the victim. And what you should do after is you should never blame the victim. Share your experiences and call out your friends about it. Do you guys have anything to add on that?
Well, Yeah, I think that those are actually really good tips because I also I had to learn those things on my own. I think actually personal tips that I want to give to the audience is that if you are in a current situation of where you feel as if you're being harassed, there are certain tips that I learned when I was younger.
Yeah.
For example, I have someone call me, like I text them, like a friend or family member, and I say, hey, can you call me in a few seconds? And what that does, it's a really simple trick, but it lets the person who you assume or who you suspect is harassing you that, oh, this person is being expected, and like if I do anything to this person, then someone's going to come after me because like this person like has family or friends. They're like she's got somewhere to be, and people are expecting her. So like just small things like that can keep you safe from like being harassed in like certain situations, things like that.
Yeah, for me, like I appreciate the last tip, that last part of the tip that you gave, which is like call out your friends because I think we're aware when our friends do something that falls in the line of that behavior that causes anyone any mental distress or harassment in general. But more often than not, a lot of people are afraid, they become bystanders. And so really, when you have the opportunity to do or say something about it, then you should. Because like don't let it happen. You already know how the implications of that on the person that they do it to. And so you wouldn't want that to happen to others. More so, you're a friend. Like you have that opportunity all the time to correct them and tell them what not to do anymore. And so I actually really appreciate that.
Right, and it's like it's evident in situations like these when like you see the two extremes. If you are being harassed or about to get harassed, it's because it's someone's doing it onto you. It's a person who doesn't care and who doesn't know you and who is like trying to like take that opportunity to do something bad. But when you call a friend or a family member, it's someone who knows you and somebody who cares about you and somebody who loves you, who will take that opportunity to do something good for you, to protect you, to help you. So call out your friends and families, guys.
Yes. Okay, so the goal of this segment is to talk about how we identified. Oh, am I way over there? I'm so sorry. So, all right. So, we just want to discuss common harassment situations. Okay, and we want to delineate the line between harassment and friends having fun.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so for example, trash talking with a friend versus trash talking in video games. What do you think is the difference?
Honestly, for me, trash talking with a friend versus trash talking in a video game. Well, if you're already trash talking with a friend, it's kind of already, what do you call that? You already have a foundation that you're already like okay with the trash talking and etc. Because if you're not, then well, you should talk about it. But then since in this situation it's trash talking with a friend, it's like you have that sense of comfortability with around each other that you can talk about that.
Right.
Trash talking in video games, I think it depends on context because there are certain situations, like for example, if you dox someone in a video game,
Right.
then that's obviously harassment. But then if you call them like, oh, you're shit at this game, or
Yeah.
you should like improve in your skills or something, then honestly, I don't think it's harassment because it's more on like a very delicate situation, like in a video game, right?
Yeah.
It's a very high pressured situation. Well,
It
depending
is.
on the video game, also. But then, yeah, people will get tilted. Well, that's the term. They'll get tilted and they'll get angry.
Yeah.
But then I don't think they really mean what they said.
Right.
It's just at that moment they just got angry and just got out of control.
Okay. Actually, you know what? If you don't mind, this question reminds me of a question because I discussed prior to recording. I discussed with this friend, and they asked me a question, and they said, "Does harassment lie on the action being done, or in the way the action is being perceived?" And I think that's a great question. The moment you brought it up to me, I couldn't respond right away. If I'm
Right.
being honest, because at first you want to say na, you might have to say na, it's the way it's perceived because like if I do. Let's say in sportsmanship in basketball, if I were to, let's say I got a score, say shot a ball, my friend smacks buttocks. Yeah.
You're behind.
My behind. To me, I wouldn't mind. Diba?
Yeah.
To us, you wouldn't mind.
Right.
Because, okay lang eh, we're friends, no problem with me. But obviously, the moment you do that to someone else, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate.
Like certain actions like that heavily rely on the relationship between especially two people. Like interactions like that. Like if you have like this mutual understanding that, oh, this is how we act with each other, it's like that's the consent given where like you have that relationship. You're close. You can do things like that.
Yeah. And that's what I thought too. But you know what? My response changed after that discussion. And especially after reading the definition that we gave.
Yeah.
It said, and if I'm correct, it said a reasonable purpose. That's within the description, right? Within the definition that we gave.
Right.
And so, what I told him was, if I think about it now, and think about that definition, reasonable purpose, regardless of us being friends or not, there's really no need for him to smack my ass. I mean, my buttocks. My buttocks. But there's really no need. Just because I'm fine with it, or anyone is, doesn't mean that you have to. There are certain gestures that aren't necessary. Kasi if we always say na and feel free to correct me, on the way it's perceived, I could say that a lot of things that have been done to me in my life are harassment.
Yeah.
So I think there are things that this have to be established, and like that's a clear example of harassment. You know, because when we allow it to be that way, just because we say na I'm always fine with it, doesn't make it any less of an harassing action. Like it really does make me uncomfortable. Like, what if I don't want him to smack my ass? But since
Editors, please take note.
my buttocks, just because it's basketball, he thinks, oh, it's fine. We'll get away with it. So, okay. Now to return that question to you guys, do you think it's in the action or in the way the action is being perceived?
Well, I definitely think it's in the way the action is being perceived. Because, okay, back to my experiences. For example, if somebody said, oh, I see, you're so beautiful, like, I'd love to date you. Like, if a friend said that, like, in like a fun way, then I'd be like, yes, girl.
Go, I
Thank
see.
you. Slay.
Go, slay.
But if I were on the street and some random guy just, like, shouts from across the street, like, hey, girl, you're looking fine. Like, I wouldn't appreciate that. Like, I'm just a person doing my business, and someone just trying like continuously commenting on my physical appearance. That's not appreciated. I don't want that. So I think it heavily relies on the way it's perceived. And like I said again, depending on the relationship of the two people interacting, because the difference between these two examples that I gave is that one, I have a very close relationship with these friends, and they have the right to give to comment about my appearance or whatever. But with the other one, he's a complete stranger. I don't know him. We don't have a relationship for him to be commenting in that way.
Okay. Do you care to share a different perspective or any at all?
I think, well, for me, I'm also siding to perceive, but more on a very contextual perspective.
Okay.
Right.
Because I feel like when the way the action is perceived, there are two ways to think about it. And on an individual scale, in a very societal scale. So like for your example, Justin, I feel like that's a very individualistic scale of an example.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like, sure, for example, right?
Yeah.
You said it's by the action. But then, what if that purpose of that action was to show like gratitude for like winning the game, or they're just being excited? So it's similar to like giving a high five or something.
Yeah.
But then in IC's example, that's more of a societal aspect that anyone can like sort of relate to, right? And it's it's not a very niche example, is what I'm getting at.
So it's like, could we say na it falls like somewhere down the middle? Like there's some things that could be perceived. Because that's what I'm saying. What I want lang naman is, obviously it could be in the way it's perceived also. That's very much true.
Yeah.
But then again, I also think that there are some actions that just
Downright bad.
bad.
Right.
Yeah,
Diba?
I agree.
Because if we don't have that line, and if we don't establish that, it's as if I could always get away with certain things na parang, okay, to me, it's not harassment naman eh.
Yeah.
Diba? I could just say that. Okay, that's an example But like, if I do something and say, no, to me, it's not harassment. It's just harassment to you. That's invalidating. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not right. And so, there are things there are actions, there are gestures they just have to be, that people should just know that it's straight up inappropriate. Kaya nga, I appreciate the term reasonable purpose. Diba?
Right.
If there's no reason for you to do that, it doesn't affect the person in any other way apart from making them feel bad, then don't do it.
So do you think this reasonable purpose lies between the individual, or is it more of a group scale, like a very societal scale?
Oh, that's a great question, Javi.
With a reasonable purpose on the individualistic scale,
Okay.
definitely it's very important.
Yeah.
When it gets to a societal scale,
Yeah.
I think that at that point we need to contextualize it and, like you said, like pull up a very like the definition of
Okay.
harassment, because like we did say earlier that harassment is something to be perceived, but it's not always necessarily subjective.
Okay.
Because with this, it's like harassment isn't something, you know, that one feels. It's in the law. There are laws about
True.
someone
True,
being harassed, and there are certain measurements and guidelines that say that like quantifies, oh, this person did like this, you know. So,
Yeah.
what do you call it? Like a,
No, it's all right. You're good,
criteria.
you're good, yeah.
Like a criteria.
Yeah.
So if those actions fall into a criteria, then harassment isn't always subjective. Perception is part of that criteria. And if we're like including that, for example, like the prior relationship or the lack of a relationship, that's still part of an objective criteria of what harassment is. So definitely.
All right, so I have this other situation that I want to ask.
Okay.
All right, so is it harassment if a man hits on a woman in a bar? Because sometimes there are people who call that harassment.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, often we all bars, right?
Yes.
They're for socializing, etc. It really depends on the approach, usually, of how a man hits on a woman at a bar. So
Yeah.
there are certain ways that men can do it in a respectful way. Like come up to the one, buy her drink, and then be like, and you don't have to use foul language. Usually
Okay.
when people like start to consider it as harassment in a bar, it's usually when it's like really inappropriate comments that usually with the average person you wouldn't really know would sit well
Yeah.
unless you were close with them. But if you're a stranger, a man who doesn't know a woman and a woman who doesn't know a man, and then he comes up to her and then he's like, "Hey, want to get in my car? Want to get back to my place?"
Oh,
And
that's
it's
crazy.
like, right? But the thing is, that happens.
It does.
That happens, and it's insane because like most people would know that certain decorum, and it's like, what's going through your head? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And that's harassment. When you use those comments, inappropriate comments, and like inappropriate touches, that's harassment. But I have also had like good experiences where like a man comes up to me and he's very respectful and he's like, "Hey, I saw you across the room and I found you really pretty. Like, could we exchange socials? Can we become friends?" And I was like,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, like I was really
That's
flattered.
actually great.
Yeah.
Right, like I was flattered. Like I would
Yeah.
not consider that harassment. I'm like, this man finds me pretty. So like, you know, it really depends on the situation.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
And this is just to throw that out there,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people also ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's this thing, na parang, that people say na parang, kapag pogi gumawa, or let's say,
No.
maybe vice versa, okay,
No.
parang, some are like fine with it.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, like, damn, that's great, that's romantic, but the moment like someone who's not as attractive does it, it's like, it's a creepy thing.
Okay. I don't know. Well, for me, I don't care about how they look.
Love
I care about their approach, because if they stereotypically do not fall into what I find attractive,
Okay.
but they're very gentlemanly and
Yeah.
and respectful about it, I'm gonna entertain that.
Yeah.
But if I don't care if he's the most handsome guy in the world. I don't care if he looks like Chris Hemsworth.
Damn.
If he
Damn. Nice, I see.
like if he goes
I
with that,
respect.
if that's the approach that I mentioned kanina with the inappropriate and the touching,
Yeah.
like definitely not. I don't care if they look good.
Can I ask?
Right.
Because you mentioned that if like a man calls you pretty by shouting at you like from across the room, that's harassment, right?
I'd say that.
Why would you say it's harassment compared to them approaching you and saying, "Oh, I think you're pretty"?
Because the difference is when a person comes up to you personally,
Yeah.
they're treating you with respect, like as another human being, as a person. Because like if they just shout it from across the room,
don't
like,
shout
hey,
at me,
like,
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
shout at me. That's that's
Okay.
that doesn't observe basic respect, and B, I don't feel like I'm being treated. Forget pretty woman. I'm not. I don't feel as if I'm being respected.
Yeah.
Being respected as a human, because like you could like. For example, if you go sightseeing
Yeah.
and then you see, oh my god, there are monkeys in the tree, and you're like, hey, there are monkeys in the tree.
Yeah.
Those are monkeys, and you can
Yeah.
yell at them. They're not gonna care. But if someone says, hey, there's a pretty girl, I find you really pretty.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I get your point. Yeah, no, because it's like when you do it in that way, it's like ginawa mo zoo animal yung babae. Like,
Kaya
dude,
nga.
like they're or like a fish in a fish tank. Like,
Right.
you're not supposed to like, hey, look, it's a pretty fish.
It's a
Like,
pretty thing.
hey, look at me. Like, don't do that.
Exactly.
Parang-
So-
I get it. I get
Right.
that.
The baseline for this, especially in a context like this, is that, like, first, please treat me as an equal human being before
True.
you treat me as a possible pretty woman interest.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
That is great.
Exactly.
That's
Thank
so
you.
nice.
Thank you.
So also, yeah, just to touch back on that bar thing, guys.
Mm.
See, it doesn't matter if you look good, brother. Like, don't do that, man. Like Icy said, the
Guys,
approach.
you heard it from a woman.
You heard it from a woman.
Yeah.
The approach is always a thing. It always matters. Like, regardless of how you look. More so in a public setting. Like, if you really want to compliment that person, be respectful about it. Like, make that effort. Like, you want to compliment her, like, cross the street, and be subtle about it. Like, hey, like, I saw you from across the street, and I just want to tell you that you look great. Then go on your day. Feel like, I'm not encouraging random dudes randomly like approach women, but like if you really want to, and like you want to have like a conversation, make that effort. Don't scream at them. Don't yell at them across the street. And in a bar setting, like,
Exactly.
talk to them properly. Don't just like, hey, you wanna come with me somewhere now? Like, have a conversation and see what's there, and then if they're comfortable enough and you've already asked them, then go ahead, try to make that relationship work. But
Yeah.
don't just scream at. They're not zoo animals. They're not there for like your pleasure, for your interest, or for entertainment. All right, so
Also, something that I want to like touch up on about this is I did talk about how harassment is something I grew up with.
yes,
And yet, the amount of times it's happened to me, I never found myself reporting these people. And I feel like that's something we need to talk about, because not just me, but majority of women
yeah,
experience harassment on the daily, and yet they never, they never feel the need to report. Not the need, but like they never actually report things that happen this way. And
Yeah.
it's, I just want to like talk about this, because the thing about harassment is, like, in a setting like this, we can clarify and justify, like,
Yeah.
objectively, this is
Yeah.
harassment, this is not. But when it's happening to you, there are so many factors that come into play, that the person that's harassing you is not just, that's not the only person he is. He's not just someone who harasses someone. He also has a family, he has friends. And so, for example, if someone came up to me and harassed me, and I go to report this, and I'm like, oh, this man harassed me, you need to arrest him, or you need to do something about it. How can they properly quantify that? Like, oh, but his family and his friends say that he's the best guy, he would never do that. But the fact is he did. And it's oftentimes when like situations like this, it's hard for women to come forward and like really talk about the truth about what happened to themselves, because it's usually they're not believed.
Yeah.
And it's
so it's discouraging.
it's really discouraging. And also just that often when you come up and talk about this, it's turned on you. Like I mean, that's the truth of the matter. That's usually what happens. So when you accuse a guy like, oh, this guy harassed me, and they're like, oh, like, do you have proof? Do you have evidence? Like, usually we don't. And then and then people will come and like, oh, why are you saying this? Like, you don't have any proof. There's no evidence. You're just seeking attention. That's just attention seeking, right? So and then it's turned on her, like, oh, she got harassed. Like, for example, a person like, oh, I got harassed, and then somebody comes forward, and they come forward, and then they talk about it, and nobody believes her, and they're like, oh, well, this girl, she's a liar.
Yeah.
She's just attention seeking. So it's double whammy. The two things happen, and like that's usually why it's really hard for women to come forward and talk about things like this. It's just something that needs to be addressed.
Wait, so just to clarify, I think you mentioned pa kanina na like you still consider those facts na like, oh, they might have a family and stuff, and like
Yeah.
so it's part of the consideration that like you wouldn't want to ruin their life.
Exactly. Because
Wait, so see, that stressed me out. I'm so sorry. No, I'm sorry.
yeah.
But like no, it's so that's frustrating to hear. Na parang tatagalog ako. I hope that's fine. Parang ikaw na yung harass. Ikaw na yung harass.
yeah.
And yet, you're still the one being so considerate towards how it would affect them when they've affected you in potentially the most negative way. And that's so unfair kasi more so if the impact on you was like, so sorry, like may family ka and everything, but the truth of the matter is you did something bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you didn't want to be held accountable for that in the first place, then you never should have done it. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
And I hope, like, if anyone's watching this who's ever been in a situation where they actually harassed a person, I hope you're hearing this. Don't make that action if you think, like, you don't want to be held accountable for it, because that's not fair. Like, there's people like I see na, siya na yung naharass, siya pa yung naging considerate.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes you feel bad. Feel bad about yourself.
Hashtag for this episode.
I'm so
feel
sorry.
bad about yourself.
I don't. I'm for that. That were my volume. I'm so sorry. That really frustrated me. Mali yun eh.
Yeah.
Diba? You made them uncomfortable. You affected them mentally. You're causing them anxiety and everything, and yet they're the ones considerate of how you feel because they have families too.
We have families too.
She's anxious, and now they have to be responsible of her too. They have to be there for her because it's hard to be there for herself in a situation like that, and yet they're considerate towards you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's proceed. I'm so sorry.
Okay, moving on to the next segment.
So, do you guys have any personal situations that you'd like to share with harassment? Justin, do you
believe,
have?
yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Hey guys, I'm Justin. I'm so sorry. That just frustrated me a bit. Okay. I have one. I don't mind sharing it. I will clearly. So I was in a bar with some friends, and they had asked me to take off my face mask and my face and everything, and my glasses pala, not my face, my glasses and my face mask, and the purpose of which was, I think, to get a free table, maybe attract someone or something. And we had walked around the bar, and out of nowhere, this girl, she grabs me by my waist, close to her table, and she was like asking me to drink, which I was clearly not comfortable with. Actually, I got really upset after, and I said, you know what, I want to get out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. And so, obviously, it falls within the definition because I didn't want it. There was no reasonable purpose for it. Don't grab a random stranger by their waist. Okay, so yeah, that's my story. Okay. You guys have any questions?
Are there any effects that you saw from that interaction that you probably feel till today?
Yeah, I'm more anxious now to be in bar settings actually, because you never know if it's gonna happen to you again. You never know if, as I'm walking in a bar, I never know if someone's just gonna randomly grab me by my waist again. Because I didn't like the feeling. I remember the feeling. Diba? I was in shock because I was just walking and I get pulled. Diba? Akala ko like a friend was maybe pulling me somewhere, and I see a bunch of random people looking at me because I was pulled to a random table in which I didn't want to be in. Okay, like it's not a flattering gesture if that's what they thought. Na like, oh, you know what, he's got no mind, he wants free drinks anyway. But no, the matter of fact is I didn't want you grabbing my by my waist. I didn't want you touching me.
Sorry, man.
Did you ever talk to this person afterwards?
No, because for one, I didn't know them, and number two, I asked to leave immediately after it happened.
Do you remember your initial reaction? Like physically or whatever you were feeling in that moment?
Initially, it was like a shock. I was like stunned for like a second or two. I was just like looking at them. I was like, who are you people? And then like I kind of like pushed them off, like not like aggressive. I was like, yo, like, get off me. And then I walked away. Yun naman, that was it. I didn't like have any insanely violent reaction towards them because that's uncalled for too. I would have been in the position to like harass them if I were the one screaming at them like, "You get off!" Like, I just want to like, please don't touch me.
Yeah. Javi, do you have any experiences you want to share?
Well, personally, I actually don't have that much experiences. Well, compared to like online video games, but I don't think that's as deep compared to yours, Justin. And I'm very sorry that you had to go through that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. It's okay.
I'd like
Can
to
you-
share.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'd like to share.
There you go. I see.
Okay, so this was it took this one really imprinted in my brain because it was like a very specific experience. So I was doing this, let's call it a seminar with a bunch of other people. They were my friends. They were all girls as well. And this seminar was a few days long. In the seminar, there were some people there, like guards. They're kind of hired to like be our guards for the seminar. And throughout the event, I started noticing that these guards were there quite often in places where they didn't need to be. And since I was one of the people like heading this event, I was everywhere, and they were where I was almost at all times. I was like, oh, maybe they're just doing their jobs. Like I was making excuses for them. Like I didn't want to jump to like conclusions. So for the first day, I was just like, okay, they're just doing their jobs. They're really diligent. Okay, but then like over time, I did notice them. They would take their phones out during their working hours because they were supposed to be there guarding us and like protecting us, but they were like taking out their phones and then like taking videos of us, of me, of my companions, and I'm like, okay, that's strange. They shouldn't be doing that because they're supposed to be working.
Yeah.
And then so I got this like really weird feeling. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but and then one of my companions brought it up to me like, hey, did you notice something strange with the people, with the guards? And then I was like, yeah, I did. Like they were watching us. And then it was really unfortunate, the things that my companions shared to me. It's like it got really specific, and I'm not gonna like share details, but it got specific to the point that this is harassment. Like they're harassing us, and thankfully we called the officials and like and we were like, hey, like we don't feel comfortable. They were doing like this, like that, so they were sent away. But even on the last day of this seminar, I remember like me and my companions, we were just looking over our shoulders, like, oh, what if they came back? What if they got angry that we reported them and told them to go away? And even afterwards, once the seminar was over and I was done, I was home. When I went back home, usually every single day, I would run around my village and it's completely safe. But then on that day and the days moving forward, like I would just look over my shoulder like, oh, is someone following me? Someone watching me? And then I would be like, since then I was like hyper aware of like cameras and like people just like standing next to me, to the point where I didn't even trust the guards in my subdivision. I knew them for years, but like that situation, that what happened to me, like affected me long term, you know. So
and like how have you processed that situation already? Like how you felt about it? Would you say you have?
Yeah, it happened quite some time ago. And since then, like, it's something like, oh, this happened to me. Like, I can learn from it. But that's sad because I shouldn't be the one to learn from it. It should be them.
Can you share how did you like start moving on from this like traumatic experience?
Yeah, like if you could, like, what steps did you take into processing that experience?
Yeah.
To be able to say you have processed it now.
Like, I had to compartmentalize it basically because, like I said, I was becoming suspicious of people I had known for years. And I had to like realize, oh, this is not like, I'm not there anymore. These people aren't them.
Yeah.
So, and then like, I just had to like over time, my brain just had to kind of disconnect what happened to where I was in the present moment. Cause like I just had to remember like, oh, I'm surrounded by family and friends and people I know and people I care about and they care about me. So it was just a time that my brain had to disconnect and, compartmentalize like this is not that. You're somewhere safe.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Asking you. No. Oh. sorry, Justin. I wanted to go back to your experience.
Okay.
When you shared this experience with your friends, do you feel like this was treated with less seriousness, given that you are a guy and that you were harassed by a girl?
Yeah, definitely.
Before answering, like, just want to say, I'm sorry that you had gone through that. No, like,
Appreciate that.
no, like, she said it took years for her to process it, and like, that's a lot. More so to have had the courage at the time to be able to report it. Like, good job.
Yeah.
Anyway, to answer Javi's question, I feel like it was treated with less seriousness. Honestly, it just felt like something that passed afterwards. When I said no, yo, let's leave. We did leave, and it's not like they asked me any questions about it. It wasn't like I was provided that comfort and hey, bro, are you okay? Kamusta ka ba? No, really. And if I can recall correctly, they're like, "Uy, saan ka galing? Ba't ang tagal mo lumabas?" Like, that was they asked me because they went out before me.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, some lady pulled me." And like the first thing that they said, "Pogi ka kasi, bro." Like, that's what was said to me.
No.
Like, ang lakas mo, okay lang yan. Yun nga yung point eh. So, it's not treated, it wasn't treated the way na you'd expect it to. If anything, ayun lang, they think, and I think a lot of people think that na, as a guy, it's a flattering experience, which really it wasn't. It causes me a lot of discomfort. I would never want to be just randomly pulled by women or anyone for that matter just because they think they want to give me a free shot or a drink. Like, I don't want that. So yeah, it wasn't treated. It was treated with less seriousness than you'd expect it to. But it's okay. I'm past it. Once like I see, I've had my time to process it, and I just hope that not every situation I'm in would end up like that, diba?
Yeah.
I'm always with like different people, etc. And it's not like I reacted in a way that was like inappropriate, Like I knew to react in a composed manner, and it's okay. It's not like they hurt me. I'm not saying that they would have before I had to do anything. I'm just saying I'm grateful na that's all it was, and I was able to move past it. It's okay. Thank you for asking, by the way. I appreciate it.
Just a follow up. Can you share some tips as well on how did you start moving on from that experience?
Okay. So I'm a very social person. In fact, they asked me if I was extroverted before the episode started, and I am,
Yeah.
So I would find myself in a lot of like those situations where I could be harassed, and I think the way that I was able to move past it was just understanding na it's not always gonna be like that. I'm not saying that anyone should process it the same way I do. But you have to be able to protect yourself as well. Be proactive about it, and obviously, not obviously, but stay away from a crowd or really keep distance from people in public spaces. Na if you feel like that's what's gonna happen, because you're able to you're able to make certain steps if you want to, of course, to lessen that possibility, and so you can. It was also providing myself some assurance in my own personal security na, I don't have to go through it again, and I can just stay away from people that I might expect to do that to me, and accepting and okay, it's already happened, and I can dwell on it. I can take my time to process it. I can provide myself security na it's done. Okay, I'm grateful that I wasn't any more harm than I think I was, and I'll just try to be more cautious moving forward. Maybe I won't allow myself to be used as bait for free drinks or something like that. So, but yeah, it was really more of accepting the situation. It's already happened, and I'm not saying that it should happen again to anyone, but acceptance for what it was, and just process it in a pace that you're comfortable. You don't have to rush into acceptance. You don't have to rush into moving on. Don't go out first for a while if you want, but keep safe, take your time, and when you're ready, go back out there if you like. That's all it was for me.
Yeah.
Can I ask, would you guys want to confront your harassers?
Personally, I would never want to see their faces again. I just want them. I would just erase them from my memory. I don't want to confront them. I just wish that never happened.
For me, given especially in that particular instance, if given the opportunity, I would. I really would, because then that provides me the opportunity of correcting their action so that moving forward, because what if they had the same perspective that my friends at the time had? Nah, it's okay. He was probably flattered because he's a good-looking guy. I pulled him. I'm sure it fed his ego or something.
Sorry, man.
See, I would have wanted them to know na, no, it wasn't an appropriate gesture to make. In fact, I didn't appreciate it. Much like Icy, I'd rather na you just approached me in a subtle manner. Na, hey, would you like to come over for a drink, rather than grabbing me by my waist? Because who thinks that's appropriate in any way anyway?
Yeah.
Diba? So I would, if I were given the opportunity, I would have wanted to confront them.
Oh, I'm really sorry that people didn't really take you seriously, because I mean, I know what that's like. And I mean, given with my situation, I was just fortunate that I was surrounded with people, like a community that we all knew each other.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest reasons why they also took our report seriously is because there were a lot of us,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of like evidence, testimonies from different people. But like in a situation like yours where it was just you and you're a guy, and like it's not really taken seriously, I mean that's still a riot. Like it makes me,
Yeah.
it's like it also frustrates me, like someone who's also been through it, and you've been through it, but it's just yours was just brushed off, like indifferent, and even people assuming that you liked it. I'm really sorry, man.
So I appreciate it, Icy.
Yeah. So, okay, having talked about all of this,
Yeah.
I feel like we could definitely give tips, especially more on the personal side. For example, like going on a date, a man and a woman specifically.
Yeah.
I'd say, like, as a woman, if you were to go out with a man for the first time, or maybe not even for the first time, someone you don't know very well,
Yeah.
I'd say that choose a public space where you both can be seen by the public, and it's access to
Witnesses.
witnesses, and fast escape route.
Okay, so just to leave the audience with something, like a rule of thumb, at least on how to identify
Right.
harassment. I think this would also serve as a way for you guys to be able to, and if no one's available, to validate them for you and provide yourself with that assurance. Because sometimes it's hard. Like Icy said, sometimes you can come to people about it and they might not validate it because they'll think, it's just a you thing, or like that's just how you perceive it to be.
Right.
I think it's good to keep in mind the definition of harassment, so you'd be able to validate your own feelings. Now, you know what?
Yeah.
I was harassed. Regardless of what anyone says, regardless of whether or not anyone else believes me, I know it was harassed. The definition is illegal behavior towards a person that causes mental or emotional suffering, which includes unwanted contacts without a reasonable purpose. A reasonable purpose. You can always ask yourself, okay, what was the reason for doing that? Diba? Was that something legal? Was that appropriate?
Right.
Like, I hope that a lot of you out there would be, and I wish for all of you to be able to validate your own feelings when you feel that you've experienced such a situation. Believe me, if you've gone through it, I'm sorry that you had gone through that, and I hope that you've been able to process it in a way that you're comfortable, and that know that it's valid. Okay,
Right.
that's it. That's it for me.
I think that was very well said.
Just want to say that I'm sorry that these things have happened to you guys, and I appreciate that you've been able to share it in this podcast. And I think with that, we can wrap up this whole podcast, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Once again, I'm Justin,
I'm Icy.
And I'm Javi.
and this has been On Deck. Thank
We'll
you.
see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm so sorry.